They told you that you were weak. They made you believe that your voice was a whisper in a storm, that your hands were too frail to shape the world, that your fire was nothing but dying embers. They conditioned you to bow your head, to shrink, to obey. And you believed them. You let their words settle into your bones, let their chains wrap around your mind until you forgot you were ever free. But listen to me. You were never weak. You were never powerless. You were never meant to live on your knees. You were only waiting to be awakened. You think the weight crushing your chest is your own doing, but it isn't. It's the accumulation of every lie you've ever been fed. Lies whispered into your ear as a child, echoing through the corridors of your mind, shaping the way you see yourself. Lies that taught you to doubt, to question, to surrender before you even tried. They told you to follow the rules, to fit the mold, to be what they expected. They said stepping out of line was dangerous, that thinking for yourself would get you nowhere. And for years, you carried those words like scripture, believing that the world was right about you, but the world was never right. They never wanted you to see the truth. You were the weapon they spent years trying to dull. You didn't wake up one day and decide to feel small. That feeling was planted in you, like a seed buried deep beneath your skin, watered by every moment of doubt, every rejection. Every time they told you to sit down and be quiet, society trained you to be silent, to be agreeable, to be satisfied with scraps, while others feasted at the table. The ones who wrote the rules never intended for you to win. They built a system designed to keep you questioning yourself, so you would never question them. They made you doubt your own power because they feared what you would become if you realized it. Think back. Can you remember the first time you felt it, that moment of hesitation before you spoke, before you acted, before you dared to believe in yourself? It started small, didn't it? A comment from a teacher, a disapproving look from a parent, a moment when you reached for something and someone told you it was out of your league. You brushed it off at first, but it happened again and again, until one day you stopped reaching, you stopped believing, you started making yourself smaller, not because you wanted to, but because it felt safer. And so the world got what it wanted. It molded you into something easy to control. Someone who apologized for taking up space, who second-guessed every decision, who stayed in the shadows and never questioned why. They convinced you that your silence was wisdom, that your hesitation was maturity, that blending in was the key to survival, but that was never the truth. The truth is, they feared you. They knew what you could become if you ever saw yourself clearly, so they made sure you never did. You started believing the illusion of powerlessness because it was easier than facing the fire of your own potential, because the idea of stepping into who you were meant to be terrified you more than the idea of staying broken. Because for so long, you were taught that power was something given, something granted by others, something you had to ask permission to hold. But power was never something to be handed to you. It was always yours to take. You let them write your story, and they wrote you as the background character, the supporting role, the one who watches while others lead. But what if I told you the pen was always in your hands? What if I told you that the limits you see are nothing more than illusions, that the only real chains are the ones you choose to keep? What if I told you that you were never weak? You were just waiting to remember who you are. This is not where your story ends. This is where it begins. They don't tell you how easy it is to fall, how pain is a slow drip hollowing you out from the inside until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. It doesn't happen all at once. It's 1,000 cuts, 1,000 disappointments, 1,000 whispered doubts that burrow into your mind and tell you you're not enough. And you believe it, not because you want to, but because the world has a way of convincing you that your failures define you, that your scars are proof of your inadequacy, that every rejection, every betrayal, every loss is evidence that you were never meant to rise. You carry it all, the weight of expectations, the silent judgments, the feeling that no matter what you do, it will never be enough. The world told you who to be, and when you tried to break free, it pushed back harder. You were told to be strong, to be resilient, to keep moving forward, but no one ever told you how exhausting it is to fight battles no one else can see. No one told you what to do when your strength runs out, so you started to slip. The fire inside you dimmed, and for the first time, you questioned whether it was even worth it. That's how it begins, the spiral downward. The moment when the doubts become louder than the dreams. The moment when the weight of everything you've been carrying becomes too heavy, and you stop fighting. You tell yourself it's just a phase, just a bad day, just a rough patch. But then the days turn into weeks, the weeks turn into months, and before you know it, you've convinced yourself that this is just who you are now. That you start playing small because it's easier. You lower your expectations because hope feels like a setup for disappointment. You tell yourself that maybe you were never meant for more, and the world agrees. The world loves to watch you shrink. It feeds on your hesitation, your fear, your uncertainty. It turns you into a pawn in a game you never agreed to play. You are conditioned to obey, to accept, to endure. They tell you to settle for less, to be grateful for what little you have, to stop chasing things that were never meant for you. And you listen. Because at some point, fighting back starts to feel like trying to hold back the ocean with your bare hands. You tell yourself you're fine. You go through the motions. You wake up, you work, you exist. But deep down, you know the truth. You are lost. And worse, you don't know if you even care anymore. Then comes the breaking point, the moment where everything collapses. Maybe it's another failure, another heartbreak, another dream slipping through your fingers. Maybe it's just the exhaustion of holding everything together for so long that your body, your mind, your soul finally say, enough. You reach the edge, and for the first time, you consider letting go, because if nothing changes, then what's the point? If the fight never ends, then why keep fighting? This is the moment that no one prepares you for. The moment when you look around and realize no one is coming to save you. No one is going to pull you out of this. No one is going to hand you a lifeline. And that realization, it shatters you. Because up until now, you've been waiting for a sign, for a chance, for someone to tell you that you're worthy, that you're meant for more. But the world doesn't work like that. The world doesn't care if you make it out of this alive. And that's where the choice comes in. You can drown in self-pity, let the weight of everything drag you under, or you can rise. You can take the suffering, the betrayals, the doubts, and forge them into something new. You can let pain be your prison, or you can make it your weapon. Because suffering isn't the end, it's the beginning. The fire that forges the unbreakable. The storm that washes away the weak parts of you and leaves only what is strong enough to survive. But you have to decide, will this destroy you, or will it transform you? No one is coming. No one is handing you the life you want. You either stand up and take it, or you stay exactly where you are. And the truth? You were never the victim. You were always the weapon, waiting to be unleashed. There comes a moment when the fog begins to lift, when the weight you've been carrying doesn't feel so much like a burden, but a revelation. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in fragments, in the quiet realizations, in the small cracks where the light begins to break through. And then, suddenly, you see it. Everything they told you was a lie. The limits they placed on you, the doubts they planted in your mind, the idea that you were never meant for more. It was all a carefully constructed illusion, a system designed to keep you weak, to keep you obedient, to keep you so consumed with questioning your own worth that you never had the strength to question the world around you. They fed you stories about your insignificance, convinced you that you needed permission to be powerful, to be bold, to take up space. But the truth? The world never had the right to define you. It only had the power you gave it. You look back at your pain, and for the first time, you don't see it as proof of your weakness. You see it for what it really is. A lesson, a teacher, a forge. Because pain was never meant to break you, it was meant to shape you. The problem wasn't the suffering itself, it was the way you let it control you. You let it tell you who you were. You let it make you feel small, instead of recognizing that every wound, every scar, every moment of struggle was fuel. You were never meant to run from pain. You were meant to master it. This is where the shift happens. This is where you stop seeing yourself as a victim of your circumstances and start seeing yourself as the warrior rising from them. You begin to understand that the things that nearly destroyed you hold the very power to rebuild you. That your wounds aren't weaknesses, they are battle marks, proof that you survived. And the second you realize that, you become dangerous, because a person who no longer fears pain is a person no one can control. But there's still one more step, burning away the old self. You cannot move forward while dragging the weight of who you used to be. You cannot become powerful while clinging to the version of yourself that was built on doubt and fear. So you make the choice, the hardest choice. You set fire to everything that held you back. You walk away from the chains, from the excuses, from the beliefs that once convinced you that you were nothing. And you choose the harder path, the one that demands sacrifice, the one that requires discipline, the one that will test you, break you, and remake you into something unrecognizable to the person you once were. Because power is not given, it is taken, it is earned, and it belongs to those willing to destroy the weak parts of themselves to claim it. This is the turning point. This is the moment you stop surviving and start becoming. The moment you step forward, everything feels different. The air, the weight of your own body, the way your mind processes the world. It has all shifted. Because now you are no longer moving through life as prey. You are stepping into your power. You see the world for what it truly is, not a place where you are at the mercy of forces beyond your control, but a battlefield where every thought, every action, every choice determines whether you rise or fall. You are no longer lost. You are no longer asking for permission to exist. You are claiming your space. And it begins with self-discipline. Because strength is not given, it is built, brick by brick, through the choices you make every single day. You learn that power isn't about force, but about control. Control over your mind, control over your emotions, control over the story you tell yourself. The world may still try to pull you back into its illusions, but now, you know better. You write your own narrative, you decide who you are, you decide how the story ends, and then you begin to understand something deeper. The war was never external. The real battle has always been within you. Mastering the art of war is not about defeating others. It's about defeating the old version of yourself. The version that hesitated, the version that flinched at confrontation, the version that sought validation instead of commanding respect. Now you move differently. Your silence is calculated, your presence carries weight. People can sense it before you even speak. The shift, the unshakable confidence, the power that no longer needs to be announced. But this transformation is not just about mindset. It is about action. Rebuilding yourself from the ashes requires more than just awareness. It demands execution. You no longer tolerate the patterns that kept you weak. You break the cycles of doubt, of hesitation, of seeking approval from people who never deserved a say in your destiny. You rise from every failure, not as the person who fell, but as someone stronger, wiser, and more dangerous than before. And one day, without realizing it, you look back and see that the person you were, the one they tried to break, no longer exists. Because you are not just surviving anymore. You are dominating. You are unstoppable. You move differently now. You do not chase, you command. Every step you take is deliberate. Every word you speak carries weight. You no longer beg for a seat at the table. You decide where you stand, and others adjust accordingly. This is the difference between who you were and who you have become. Before, you sought validation, permission, approval, but now you are your own authority. You do not ask, you do not wait, you take. Unshakable confidence is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not scream for acknowledgement. It simply exists, and that is why it is so powerful. The moment you stop needing to be seen is the moment you become impossible to ignore. This is the mindset of a warrior, not one who fights out of desperation, but one who knows their worth so completely that the world has no choice but to recognize it. And with that power comes something even greater, the power of silence. The strongest people do not explain themselves. They do not argue for their position. They do not waste breath proving what is already undeniable. They walk into a room and their presence is enough. Because real power is felt, not flaunted. You do not need to announce who you are when you already know. This is the psychology of power. Influence is not about talking the loudest. It is about mastering control. Control over your emotions, your energy, your reactions. Weak people respond to everything, needing to be heard, needing to be right. The powerful move with precision. They choose when to strike, when to speak, when to act. And because they are selective, when they do move, the impact is undeniable. At last, you see it clearly. You were not born to be ordinary. The final moment of awakening is not some grand external event. It is the quiet, absolute realization that you were never meant to live a life of mediocrity. The world tried to shape you into something small, something manageable, but that was never your destiny. And now, you make the decision. The one that will define everything that comes next. You will never go back. Never again will you shrink to fit someone else's version of you. Never again will you let fear dictate your choices. Never again will you trade your power for acceptance, because you are not like them. You never were. You were always meant to stand apart, to lead, to command, to conquer. And now, at last, you are ready. The world does not welcome transformation. The moment you rise, the moment you step into your power, you will face resistance. Not everyone will be ready for who you've become. Some will be threatened. Some will resent you, and some will do everything in their power to drag you back down. You will see it in their eyes, the jealousy, the fear, the discomfort, because your growth forces them to confront their own stagnation. You are a reminder of what they could be, what they failed to become, what they were too afraid to pursue, and instead of being inspired, they will try to destroy what they do not understand. They will whisper behind your back, they will try to plant doubt in your mind, they will mock you to make themselves feel bigger, but you do not shrink for them. You let them choke on their own insecurities, because the cost of power is loneliness. The stronger you become, the fewer people will be able to walk beside you, and that is the price you must be willing to pay. But even as they fight against you, you will no longer play their game. You are not here to seek approval. You are not here to waste energy on battles that do not serve you. You learn to move differently, not reacting to every challenge, not engaging in every fight. You outthink, you outmaneuver, you outlast. The weak seek constant validation. The powerful choose their battles. You do not need to prove yourself to anyone. You know when to strike and when to walk away. That is the art of strategic thinking. Not being led by emotion, but by mastery. And then the moment arrives, the reckoning. The moment when you look around and realize that the world no longer controls you, that the expectations, the opinions, the limitations, they hold no power over you anymore. The chains have been broken, the weight is gone, and for the first time, you feel what it means to be truly free. You look back at the person you used to be and you do not recognize them. That version of you, the one who doubted, who hesitated, who begged for permission, no longer exists. You have stepped into something greater. You have become the weapon they never wanted you to be. And now, there is no turning back. Power without purpose is nothing but chaos. Now that you have become unstoppable, the question is, what will you do with it? Strength is not just about dominance. It is not about destruction. It is about creation, about legacy, about what remains long after you are gone. Because true power is not measured by how much you take, but by how much you leave behind. You have fought, you have risen, you have become. But now, you must ask yourself, what is it all for? You did not come this far just to exist. You did not survive only to drift through life without direction. You are meant to be a force of change, and that comes with responsibility. You hold the power to shape the world around you, whether you lift others or crush them, whether you inspire or intimidate. That is your choice, but make no mistake, your presence will be felt, because people like you do not go unnoticed. This is the difference between merely living and truly leaving a mark. Most people go through life afraid, forgotten the moment they are gone. But the strong, the ones who dare to become more, they reshape reality itself. They do not just move through the world, they bend it to their will. They make an impact so deep that generations feel their presence long after they are dust. So ask yourself, what will they say about you when you are gone? Will you be remembered as someone who walked among the shadows, unnoticed and unremarkable? Or will your name be spoken with reverence, with awe, with the understanding that you are something different? Something that could never be ignored. And now we come to the final moment, the moment of decision. This is where you choose. Will you stay where it is comfortable, where it is easy, where you do not have to face the weight of your own potential? Or will you step forward, into the fire, into the unknown, into the life that was always meant to be yours? This is it, the last breath before transformation, the final test. There is no more waiting, no more hesitation. Either you rise or you remain in the ashes. The choice is yours.